So this is the little calamondin, which is closely related to a kumquat, and you can eat the whole fruit, and it lives here on the porch. And we'll start the tour from here. Coming off the porch, we have the baby cakes blackberry, which is blooming right now. So we'll have berries from that and berries from all these lovely little strawberries that had started out in a pot and have now spread themselves wherever they want to go. The dwarf mulberry is recovering. It frosted this spring. I was kind of surprised it impacted it because usually mulberry is pretty resistant to that kind of thing. But that's the first of the fruit trees as you come out of the house. I mean, unless we count the calamondin, in which case that's the first of the fruit trees. The crossvine is growing really well up the trellis that we put up last year. I will be filling in the base, um, probably with roses. That's been requested. And speaking of roses, the Zephrine Drouin is blooming for the first time this year, spring, and it has grown nicely. And I expect it to be absolutely covered in pink blooms next year, but right now we are still getting a bloom here and a bloom there, and they smell amazing, which makes me very happy. This is a bit weedy and messy back here, but there are currants and strawberries, more currants. There's a gooseberry. There are some, they badly need trellised, loganberries going back here. They're blooming right now. This is a plum. It died back to the rootstock, so I'm honestly not sure what we're going to get there. And right next to it is a beautyberry. Beautyberries are edible. They have a brilliant purple berry, but they're a little insipid, so they don't have a lot of flavor. And then coming over here, we have the fig. I covered this, and it did die back a little bit. You can see the dead sticks, but it survived that cold winter that we had. And then kind of in the shade in this corner, you're not going to be able to see it real well. That's a jujube tree. And past it, those three little tiny trees over there, those are Chickasaw plums. So they're a wild plum. And then this big lovely thing here is Mexican plum. And it is not a clumping plum like the Chickasaws are. It will grow into its own solitary tree and not spread out much more than it is. Next to it are golden currants, which are a native to this area of Texas. They have a pretty yellow flower in the spring, and then they'll have little black berries a little bit later. Between the plum and the currant is a pear that I'm trying to train as a step over, and it needs a little assistance. This is the pecan that was here in the front yard when we moved in, and it is not to the edge of maturity yet, so it hasn't been bearing nuts, and it will have to get cut back at some point or it'll get into the power lines. So I'm not sure what I'm not sure what we're doing long term with that particular pecan. More golden currant, and then another pear, which has a golden currant kind of growing up around it. And this arch is grapes. Now, these are Concord grapes, and when I planted them, I thought I was getting seedless grapes, but no. There's a red grape and a green grape, one on each side, and they have seeds. So, grape jelly, grape juice, grape wine, probably other things I haven't thought of. This is a Methley plum tree, and I don't know if it will bear fruit this year. It seems to be doing okay, but it does have gummosis down by the base of the trunk. So we will see if it stays healthy for me or not. And then coming around the corner a bit here, which hasn't really leafed out, and I'll get in close enough you can see that it does have a few blooms this year. This is a Jonathan apple. And behind it and below it is a Gregg salvia and a hardy hibiscus just starting to come up. The hardy hibiscus will be taller than I am and full of lovely red blooms a little bit later this season. I just put in an agarita this spring. This also has edible berries. It's related to Oregon grape. It's a bit prickly. It's kind of like a holly. And then we have the crabapple. This is a Dolgo crabapple, and it is being trained espalier to keep it nice and flat and within the fruiting hedge. The unknown rose, which is just about ready to pop out into all kinds of these deep, deep, dark pink blooms. And I won't be here when it starts blooming because I'm traveling. And then there's a persimmon. This is an Asian persimmon here. We haven't had fruit on it yet, but we might this year. It's still maturing. It's only been in the ground for 3 years. And I really love this pink penstemon. It's just so pretty. And it has really taken over in this spot. It loves it here. Looking back towards the house and the front porch, the other beds, this little thing here, which blew over in the last storm, and I've got it tied up now, that's a Nanking cherry. So they're very tart. They're a pie cherry. And it seems to be doing okay. It bloomed this year. I don't know if it set any fruit, and since it's been blown around, any fruit it did set, I probably should pull off, let it establish its roots. Waldorf and Statler. This arch will eventually have roses on it. There's another beautyberry here for more berries. And this is the peach tree that we had some lovely peaches off of this last year. So it is doing quite well. It bloomed. It's undoubtedly going to give us some fruit this year unless things frost it off, which is possible. Coming over here, it's kind of a mess at this end. There's a little fig there. You can just see the sticks sticking up, but it is coming back from the roots. This is a wonderful pomegranate. It died back to the roots, not this winter, obviously, but the winter before, so it's still recovering from that. It may be a bit exposed because it's at the end of the neighbor's fence here, so I may have to move it in time. We'll see. This is another peach tree. It bloomed nicely this year, so hopefully we're going to see some fruit off of it this year. I hope we do, because when I bought it, it was not labeled peach, but it is obviously a peach tree. This is the problem with buying bare root sticks. Sometimes you don't get what you think you're getting. And coming over back here towards the house, this is another Asian persimmon, very young. I don't expect fruit off of it this year. And there's some hedge shrubs in here that were left over from what the people had before us in this house. And then I've got my roses that I've put in that aren't quite in bloom other than those two. I'll get to those. So this is the Syrah Nor pomegranate, and we had some pomegranates off this last year, and they were lovely. So I'm really looking forward to it bearing again this year. And I put this Jerusalem sage right next to it, which has this really interesting flower. Let's see if we can get a good look. And the Jerusalem sage, I did not realize was going to get quite this large. So I'll probably have to prune it back a little bit just to give the Syrah Nor some more space to expand. And next to this is a quince, which did bloom this year, but I don't expect fruit because, as you can see, it's still very young, and it's in the preliminary stages of being trained espalier. Next to it is a Mexican plum again, so now I have 2 Mexican plums, because even though they should be self-fertile, they will do better on bearing if we have more than one. And then just rotating back across the driveway, because I want to show you the Blaze Climber is doing really well. And then this yellow rose, I can't remember the name of it, but it is just doing beautifully this year. So happy with it. And this is kind of my vision for it, was to have the Blaze climbing up and the coral honeysuckle, which is the native honeysuckle to this area, covering this trellis, and I have a couple of other roses at the base that are just still developing. This is only year 4 in the garden, and the first year I really didn't do a lot. I was observing. I have a Japan holly here, and this, the leaves can be roasted and made into tea, and it's also just a good structural plant. And behind that, I have, on one on each side of the fence here, I have 2 Asian pears, because I realized after planting this one this last year, it needed a pollinator. So then we got this little goody guy here. So it's going to be a few years on those. The Asian pear that was in from last year did bloom heavily this year. I don't expect it to set fruit because no pollinator. Don't even have any other pears blooming yet. So, coming back to just finish up this little area here. This is a pluot. It did bloom this year, and I believe it has set fruit, so that should be nice to see what we get. And then in this little corner here, I have a Mustang grape, and it is a wild grape native to this area. It is a very heavy, aggressive grapevine, so I have hopes that it will grow and I can train it up along this chain link fence here and get harvest off of it. Mustang grapes are not edible out of hand, so this will be used for things like grape jelly, and if we do wind up making wine, we'll do that. And then against the south wall of the house, I have got a bunch of stuff going on because this is a very protected area. So this is where all the citrus live. So this first citrus here is a Satsuma. And then we have the Meyer lemon, which is this very short little guy here. The lime tree. A couple of peppers that I overwintered in pots and may just leave them in pots. They seem to be happy like that. And then this is actually 2 Meyer lemons in one pot. And behind it, again, protected up against my big water tank, is another Satsuma that's actually planted in ground. And it bloomed prolifically and has set some fruit. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how well that did. We protected it with incandescent Christmas lights and floating row cover this winter, and even down to 0 Fahrenheit, it did fine. A little bit of stress on the leaves, you can see there. There is a clematis on this, and I'm going to show you my little greenhouse because today I plant everything that's in the greenhouse so that my husband doesn't have to take care of it while I'm gone. But this is the little bitty greenhouse where I've been doing some seed starting. But it needs to all get planted out so he doesn't have to deal with it. Tam jalapeno pepper that it will live in its pot. So then we walk back towards the back garden. And here we have a little bitty fig that I covered this last winter so it didn't die back. And it'll get bigger, much bigger, hopefully this year. And I won't be able to cover it with a 5-gallon bucket full of leaves next winter. And an aster, and coming up into the apricot. I have the apricot fan trained against the south wall of the garage. And here by the So I'm switching over to a voiceover now because we lost audio from my original recording. So this is the chicken coop, and I planted a grape on that. And then there's the other little fig, which is next to the water barrel, and it was protected nicely this winter when we had such a cold freeze. In these pots here, I have 3 hardy kiwi vines started. And then we're going to go into the garden itself and looking at my raised beds, which are doing okay. A lot of things are starting to bolt already. It's been such a crazy spring. It was so warm so quickly. We had that cold snap for 2 weeks, and then it just got hot. And I am not sure what of the radishes that I planted, which is most of what you're looking at in this first pot, not sure how well they're going to do. the raised beds, I've got my tomatoes in there, and there's some flowers there at the end that are actually already starting to bloom. Here at the south end of the chicken coop, I've got blackberries, and I believe these are Caddo blackberries or probably Arapaho. I've got several different thornless blackberries, including a volunteer there at the end of that bed. And mostly right now, this bed has lettuce and onions. The arch that goes in between the two beds I usually use to plant melons and train melons up that or cucumbers, and I'll be planting those from seed before I leave for my trip. Looking back here, that is a flowering quince, not in flower at this time, and it is completely different than the fruiting quince that I showed you a little bit earlier. I'm not going to go back behind the house and show you the elderberries. You'll kind of have to trust me that they're there. It's a mess back there right now. The whole yard is a bit of a mess. This is another blackberry I'm looking at here. I've been doing quite a bit of pruning. All these trees here are junk trees. These are like hackberry, except for the big trunk there. That is my pecan. And this area of the yard is heavily shaded by the pecan. Not a lot grows under it. And it didn't even set nuts until I started irrigating it last year. But now that I'm giving it water, we should start to see nut harvests coming off of it. I have a mature redbud that was here when we moved in, and next to it I've planted a very small redbud. Below it, I had planted 3 haskap berries, and I knew they would marginal in this area, and they did not survive. All 3 of them died, which is a sign that I should not try that again. The redbud, on the other hand, will be just fine. So looking here, we have not a lot going on in this bed besides my irises, and they got pretty blown around in this last storm, so they're kind of sideways irises at this point. But they're still pretty. And another flowering quince. The arch that's here I just put in, like yesterday put in, and it will have 2 muscadines planted, one on each side of it, so they grow up it and possibly onto the fence as well. On the other side of that are my asparagus, and this is a Mustang grape planted to grow up onto the trellis that my son and I built at the south end. And there is Smeagol, the neighbor's cat. I was trying to get his attention, and he had other things on his mind. He did come over a little bit, but he's a nice pussy cat. His territory and his brother Baggins, who's a gray tabby, is in my backyard, but he does not belong to me. So we're looking at a peach tree right there at the back. Now this peach tree died back to the rootstock, and what's coming up and bloomed this year and set fruit, we will find out if it's edible this year. And then next to it are a couple of American persimmons. These are volunteers from a tree that's on the other side of my shop. So I have when they'll set fruit, or even if they'll set fruit. And my asparagus. It's pretty big this year. I planted some crowns from a box store that did not come up at all. That'll teach me to buy the cheap stuff at the box store. I will get better crowns this fall and put those in. So yeah, this is the garden, and it is a very busy place right now. And I worked on it for several hours yesterday. I'll be working on it for a few more hours today. It will still need work. The chickens are announcing that they have laid an egg. So it's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding. And things like I could come out here this morning and pull some garlic chives for breakfast. I made a frittata. I have a squash that's blooming over here. So that'll be fun. If that bears fruit while I'm gone, I won't be able to do anything about it. The peas are coming up nicely. They didn't get a huge germination on these this year. It was just so dry, and I just finished putting in irrigation. You'll see the cardboard there because I need to put mulch down over it, and yeah, it's gonna be a good year this year. This should be the first full year of production, and I am looking forward to seeing what we get. Want to say hello, ladies? Not particularly. These are the young ones. We got 2 adult hens, and then these guys probably won't start laying until June, maybe July. I really hope we get apricots this year. I think that's about all. And I will say goodbye, and we'll do this again in a couple of months, and I will show you what's growing in my garden.